Agriculture and food activities today exert a range of widespread, multifaceted impacts on the climate and environment. The Department of Bioindustry Communication and Development of National Taiwan University therefore organizes this conference, APSafe, in collaboration with European Society for Agriculture and Food Ethics, EuroSafe. It is our great pleasure to welcome experts and scholars from around the world to exchange the most cutting-edge ideas. And now, please welcome 2018 APSafe Conference Chair, Professor Junhao Wang, to address the Assembly. Welcome, Professor Wang.
Dear Deputy Minister Huang from the Council of Agriculture, President Poul, 郭大伟校长 and Dean 卢武生院长 Professor Kaiser, Director Miller, the former chairman and the current chairwoman of the EuroSafe, and our honorable keynote speakers, Dr. Shiva, Poul Thompson, Professor Poul Thompson, and Professor Holm, Professor Kirill, Thompson, and all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This is really delightful to have you all join us for the 2018 APSafe Conference in cooperation with the European Society for Agriculture and Food Ethics, the EuroSafe. It is actually the first time for Taiwan organizing the Asia-Pacific Conference on the issue of agricultural and food ethics to exchange good ideas and discuss agriculture and food challenges for the future. As a matter of fact, this event initiated is a meeting with Professor Kaiser and Professor Thompson, Professor Guo Huaran 教授 and Professor Che教授 1 year ago. After that, we actively invited lots of scholars and experts from different universities, research institutes, public and private sectors, as well as NGOs, to work together over 1 year to make this Asia-Pacific Conference come true right now in Taiwan and in the National Taiwan University. In addition, the organizing committee of the Asia-Pacific Conference integrated different professional fields, including humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences, and brings theoretical and practical experiences together to face the challenges of climate change and its impact on agriculture, food, and our society. Now we must rethink and redefine the relationship between production, consumption, technology, education, cultural differences, and the natural environment. Therefore, the ethical issues will play an important role for agriculture, food, and human health in the future. So we organize 10 important agendas and expect for your excellent ideas and contribution. They are crop and animal production in climate change and ethics, food and agricultural education, food ethics and living philosophy, indigenous people, food sovereignty, ethnic groups and globalization of food culture, gender and food, spatial planning and land ethics, consumer food safety and free trade. On behalf of the organizer committee, I would like to thank both domestic and foreign scholars. Really, it's amazing for me. In total, there are about 80 papers from 12 countries being submitted. This shows the concerns of agricultural and food ethics is a global issue that crosses national and continental borders. Once again, I appreciate the committee members, kind and generous sponsors, and all of you for attending this great event. Last but not least, the 2018APSafe conference is also the 90th anniversary activities for our university. So let's wish happy birthday to National Taiwan University. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Wang. And happy birthday for National Taiwan University. Thank you. And now also 2018 APSafe Conference Chair, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Matthias Kaiser onto the stage to address the assembly. Welcome, Professor.
Honored dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. As the co-chair of this conference and as an ambassador of the European Society for Agriculture and Food Ethics, I am honored to take this role, and I'm personally pleased to see so many people here, so many delegates joining in to discuss what we believe is a very, very important and increasingly important topics. In Europe, we have had our European Society, EuroSafe, since 1999. And we always thought that our appreciation of the importance of the ethical issues around food must have some mirror images in other parts of the world as well. And very often individual delegates from the United States, as for example Paul Thompson and others, have shown us that this is indeed true. But we wanted to see if an activity like we have it in Europe could be started up in other places, and we thought no more would be more appropriate than the Asian countries, because we all know how much you appreciate very good food, and we appreciate it as well. So that was our starting intuition about it, to approach our dear colleagues here in Taiwan to think about running this conference. Now, the ethics of food is, as I said, an increasingly important topic. And just imagine the long value chain that is related to food. It starts with the suppliers, it goes to the producers, sometimes small farmers, sometimes big producers. It then goes on to the processing industry and to traders, and then to the retailers, and finally to the consumers. And all along the way, all along this value chain, decisions have to be made. And these decisions will typically be based on values. Actors take their values and think, oh, this is the right course of action. And somewhere along the line, or typically at the end, we as consumers, we have to trust that all these people along the value chain make good decisions in order to trust our food. What we see still in our modern world is that that trust is very often eroded. That we see there may be sometimes reasons for distrust, that not all is well, and that some of the technological developments that we have seen in agriculture, in aquaculture, in fisheries, or in other fields that supply our food, that some of these decisions are not necessarily in the best interest of our environment, of future generations, or even of us as consumers. And that is where the question comes from. Can we really trust them? What would be the right decisions? What are the values that carry on our food production? Now, this is also a challenge to us in the sciences. And I know that very often there is a little bit of a resistance because we are used to work in disciplines. We have our disciplinary questions. The one is an economist, the other is a philosopher or whatever. And we follow our own disciplinary questions. But what the challenge is, the real challenge is to provide the answers to the questions that are out there in our societies, to give good answers to those questions. And in order to do that, we have to pull our strength together. We have to work interdisciplinary, or at least multidisciplinary, in order to give that answer, and in order to help maybe rebuild the trust and actually enable the actors or the stakeholders to make trustworthy decisions. So, and in that sense, I think we need to start initiatives like this. I also want to just finally mention one thing, that we need an outlet to publish this scientifically, to reach out. We have a journal, it's called Food Ethics, and there will be hopefully a copy somewhere outside very soon. We encourage you all, this is a journal particularly for EuroSafe and APSafe people that have these interdisciplinary interests from all kinds of disciplines. So we encourage you all to think about your activity and maybe publishing something, going out, make your ethical voices heard, your ethical concerns, dilemmas, and questions. So don't let it be done with this conference. I'm sure it will be a very nice and interesting conference, but keep on with the work. Produce output that can be shown to even more people than are in this room. And I hope that this will be the start of a longer tradition of conferences and academic work for all of you. And with these words, I wish you all a very nice and interesting conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kaiser. Thank you. Today we are very honored to have the presence of many distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President of National Taiwan University, Professor Dawei Guo, to say a few words to us.
Dear Deputy Minister Dr. Huang, Professor Lu, Dean of our Biological Resources and Agriculture, Conference Chairman, Professor Matthias Kaiser, Professor Junhao Wang, keynote speakers, Professor Shiva, distinguished guests, and all the good friends, good morning. In collaboration with the European Society for Agriculture and Food Ethics, this is the first time for National Taiwan University to organize the 2018 Asian Pacific Symposiums on Agriculture and Food Ethics. As you might realize that EuroSafe, established in 1999, has successfully held many conferences on agri-food and also food ethics in various countries and the world. It addressed many important issues in agricultural development, food ethics, food issues, and so forth. And it's an honor and pleasure for the National Taiwan University to run the conference in cooperation with EuroSafe in Taiwan. We'd like to thank the organizing committee in inviting global renowned experts as keynote speaker to the conference. We also appreciate both the domestic and foreign scholars to present the special topics and papers for the conference. And indeed, the result might influence the international conferences on agro-environment, food consumption, humanity in various regions, and also social ethics concerns as well. National Taiwan University is the most prestigious and comprehensive university in Taiwan. We are very happy to have this wonderful event be part of our 19th anniversary celebrations. Finally, I'd like to thank Professor Matthew Kaiser, Professor Kat Miller, Chairman Junhao Wang, and all the organizing committee for organizing the conference in Taiwan. We want to wish the best for the conference and all the participants here today for the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, President Guo. 感谢郭校长 Thank you. And next, please welcome Deputy Minister of the Council of Agriculture Taiwan, Mr. Jin-Cheng Huang, to give us his words of encouragement. 让我们掌声欢迎农委会黄锦春副主委上台致辞。
台大郭代理校长，事实上，应该也是真正的执行校长，那因为现在台大没有校长，那还有台大农学院的卢院长，还有大会主席 Professor Kaiser， 大会主席王教授，Ladies and Gentlemen，Good morning，因为他们帮我准备的是中文的稿，那我就用中文的稿来跟各位。事实上，如果准备英文稿，我也可以讲了没有问题。因为我对这一个粮食，因为我本身是动物的动物我很熟，那植物的我就比较没有那么熟那今天很荣幸有这个机会呢，来参加这一个有关台湾首次举办的跟欧洲的一个农业及食物伦理协会共同办理的2018APSafe 亚太地区农粮及食物伦理国际研讨会那真的很荣幸。那农业在台湾的话呢，事实上是非常重要的一件，因为台湾是开始是以农业来立国的，所以农业一直在台湾的发展过程里面扮演非常重要的一个角色。所以今天办这一个有关农业跟食物伦理的这个部分的一个研讨会，事实上的意义是非常重大的。那这一次的话呢，也邀请了非常多的国际上非常有分量的一个专家到台湾来做这样的一个推动。那特别我介绍的就是Professor Dr. Shiva他过去的话呢，在 WTO 里面的话呢，因为农委会特别是在 WTO 的会谈里面都会参与。Dr. Shiva 在WTO 的谈判里面，事实上他也参与的非常多，还有他也参与有关联合国的一个气候变迁纲要公约的一个每年的一个重大的一个会议讨论的话他都有他的影子在，所以事实上 Dr. Shiva 是一个非常重要的在不管是在人权方面还是在农业环境这方面，他都扮演了非常重要的一个角色。那今天来这个开这会议之前呢，他还跟副总统陈副总统见面那讨论了有关农业跟一个粮食伦理的这样的一个议题事实上非常之。那他刚刚也跟我讲，这已经是他第3次到台湾来所以他对台湾应该也有非常重要的一个就是经验那印度过去的话呢就是曾经这一段时间以来跟我们农委会的关系也非常密切特别是有关农业的一个合作的议题我们跟他们的驻台的代表10人代表也非常深入的在讨论有关台湾跟印度合作的这个议题那今天这个研讨会主要是聚焦在农粮生产跟食品安全以及环境守护的一个非常严正的这样的课题。那我们希望透过这3天的研讨，也能够让台湾在粮食、农粮以及食物伦理方面得到非常大的一个发展那今天的话呢，我特别感谢这个大会主席就是 Professor Kaiser and Professor Miller and 台大的一个王教授以及各位筹备会的一个同仁那希望这个今天开始的3天的会期，能够让大家得到非常丰硕的一个知识的一个增长那最后敬祝大会圆满成功，那各位身体健康一切顺利，谢谢。
And ladies and gentlemen, may I please, before our keynote speech, may I please invite Professor Louisa Zhuing-Zhang, President for International Affairs, National Taiwan University, onto the stage to say a few words to us.
Well, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, well, my talk will be extra, just like when we do something cuisine, we need some decoration. Well, today we have 2 present. Well, our president will have something to do, so he just left. President Kaiser, President Miller, Dr. Shiva, and our keynote speaker, Professor Holm, and Thompson, Kirill Thompson, and another Thompson. And dear colleagues and friends, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Louisa Zhuing-Zhang, Vice President for International Affairs and also Professor of Spanish Literature. And I feel honored and delighted to say some words, especially my colleague, Professor Kirill Thompson, invited me to give some words, and thanks to the organizing team. Actually, I think today's topic is quite promising and challenging because over the past years, we talk about food security, agriculture, ethics, but it seems that we never put this issue together. And I think it's quite promising because things have changed much faster than what we can imagine. So we are facing new challenge. And actually, I think, including the cuisine, from the traditional gastronomy to the nowadays modern molecular gastronomy invented by a Spanish most famous cook, is the Catalan. So I would like to know if the molecular gastronomy is also a kind of ethic or not. And actually, I think we are facing some new challenge and problem like contamination, PM 2.5, and many factors, including the movie, the message we get from the movie, butterfly effect, right? So I think today's issue is quite promising because we can brainstorming to think a lot of problem solving. And actually, I myself, I'm from a farming family. 40 years ago, when I was a little girl, I participated in every kind of activity from my parents. In my home, we cultivated. We have cow, we have pig. We cultivate potato, popcorn, rice field. So I participate everything. So today's issue, I'm interested to know something more that what we will be working for the 21st century. So I think here we have many scholars, faculty members who can tell us their research and their study. So I welcome and thank you for coming and hope you today's conference will be very successful and we can get some consensus, help us to face our future challenge. And again, thank you for coming and welcome to National Taiwan University. You know, Taiwan is a small island. However, National Taiwan University is a huge university. National Taiwan University occupies 1% of Taiwan territory, and 99% of this 1% belong to College of Agriculture. So I think they can play a very important role. And let's again thanks to Dean Lu for their efforts and the Chair Wing for their labor work and many efforts to make this conference possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. Thank you, President for the International Affairs from National Taiwan University. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to keynote speech. And may I please invite the moderator of the session, Professor Husheng Lu, Dean of College of Bioresources and Agriculture of National Taiwan University, onto the stage to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Vandana Shiva. Please welcome Professor Lu.
Well, I'm the owner of the 1% of the acreage of Taiwan area. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests, especially honorable keynote speakers, and President Wang, professors around a lot of areas. I noticed sitting there are some of our friends and guests, and especially I noticed a lot of young generation sitting in the audience. I think that's most valuable for them to join the conference, to learn what's our future is going to be. My job is to introduce Dr. Shiva to give us a very precious lecture and topic this morning. I noticed Dr. Shiva has a very long list of the honors, awards. So if you want to know detail about Dr. Shiva, to save time, just Google. So I will briefly introduce her. It's my honor, of course. She is an honorable scientist, philosopher, and I think most important is a mentor to a lot of us in the environmental sustainable area. And she's a mentor in the area of environmental sustainability, food ethics, human rights, especially women's rights, and as well as human welfare. And she completed her degree, PhD degree in the University of Western Ontario, especially in physics. How can a scientist in physics has a big contribution in agriculture? So that's a thing I think we should learn from her. And she received, as I mentioned, a long list of many awards, including the famous one, Right Livelihood Award. The award is also recognized as the alternative Nobel Prize to the world. And the one thing I noticed especially, the Time magazine identified her as an environmental hero. So that's maybe something I hope to learn from her. That is also a very significant honor to represent her achievement to the world. And it is a special moment and precious to us. So to save time, ladies and gentlemen, please join me with your big hands to welcome Dr. Vandana Shiva.
Thank you very much, President Liu. And thank you to the National Taiwan University for hosting us, for both the APSafe and Asia Pacific, Agriculture, Food Ethics Associations to put all the efforts. I know what it takes to organizing a meeting, especially an intercontinental one like this. So thank you for all your labor of love and thinking. Just a few points related to my introduction. You mentioned the Time magazine nominating me one of the 10 heroes in the lead up to the 10 years after the Earth Summit, which was Rio Plus 10, so the Sustainability Summit at Johannesburg. And in response to that Time magazine, I was given a bullshit award. And then some Swedish filmmakers decided to make a film called Bullshit, which is because they wanted to see why young people were rising on the issue of WTO and globalization. They wanted to understand why people brought the World Trade Organization to a halt in Seattle. And in fact, the World Trade Organization has been, as Pascal Lamy himself said, on intensive care since that time. So I've been at the heart of the storm of food ethics, partly because I came into food for ethical reasons alone. Not for professional reasons. I have absolutely no professional training in the field. My only professional training is physics, and then not being satisfied by a mechanistic thought process, I went deeper and deeper and deeper into quantum theory, which is why I went to Western Ontario to do a PhD on non-locality in quantum theory. I think that is the basic issue, that non-separability and interconnectedness has to guide all discussion on food, all discussion on safety, all discussion on ethics. We've been made to think mechanically over 2 centuries and over 50 years mechanically about food, because that's when industrialization of food started. The mechanical view originates with the fossil fuel world, the age of oil. And it's amazing because when I was trying to understand for a major study I did for the United Nations University, why conflicts were arising, including conflicts in Punjab. And I wrote a book called The Violence of the Green Revolution for the United Nations University as part of that program on peace and global transformation. I read every book that is taught or was taught then. I'm talking of the early 80s, to people in agriculture. And I hope the books have changed since then. The soil is an empty container for pouring nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium into. No, the soil is such a rich web of life. It is one of the richest ecosystems in the world, and the state of soil is what decides the state of our food system, our health. As I repeatedly say, 1 gram of organic soil contains 30,000 protozoa, 50,000 algae, 400,000 fungi. In 1 teaspoon is 1 billion bacteria, which translate into 1 ton per acre. And 1 square cubic meter contains 1,000 earthworms. They are providing food. Charles Darwin wrote a book, not too known, because with the fossil fuel age came the age of competition. So the whole rendering of evolution was defined as an issue of competition. But Darwin wrote 2 other amazing books. One is on the mold, on the earthworm. He says when the history of evolution is written, the earthworm will be recognized as the most important species for the survival of humanity. And I would just say, you want to know about food ethics, ask the earthworm. When I teach farmers organic farming, they have been made to feel that compost is dirty. It's brown. Urea is clean, it's white, you just throw pellets. And I take a few and put it on an earthworm before it. And the earthworm starts to wriggle, because it is a salt after all. And there is not a farmer I know in India who has been training with us on organic who doesn't hold his ears, which we do when we made a mistake. I had no idea I was engaging in such violence, that you're killing the very life that supports you. Another amazing book of Darwin is on plant roots. He called plants, roots, the brain of the plant. And now new research is showing us how the neurological activity in one barley plant, there's more neurological activity going on than in our brain. And we've put ourselves on an anthropocentric pedestal that man is on the top. In Indian philosophy, we recognize that the web of life is a food web. As an ancient Upanishad says, all that is born of anna, which is the Hindi word, the Sanskrit word for food. Food is anna. All that is born of anna indeed. Whatever exists on earth is born of Anna, and in the end merges into Anna. We become food for microbes. Anna indeed is the firstborn amongst all beings. That is why Anna is called Sarva Aushadhi, the medicine for all. And because everything is food and everything is something else's food, real food has to maintain the system at every level, whether it be the planetary system, where it's about species protection, climate stability, managing the temperature of the earth, working with the earth, which manages her own temperature and her climate systems. After all, that's the reason James Lovelock called the earth Gaia, because his work in NASA showed him that the earth, like every living system, is a self-organized complex system and has created over these few thousand years a niche for human beings to evolve as a species. The earth will have other temperatures, the earth might have other rainfall patterns, but for the human species to exist, there's a very, very narrow niche and an extremely recent history in the context of the earth's evolutionary history. In my culture, we think of ethics in the context of dharma. Dharma, which is also a Buddhist word, is defined and is rooted in the word dhri, that which holds, that which binds. Adharma is that which ruptures, that which breaks, that which tears apart. Real food, I have learned, and as we were talking in the morning, someone came, introduced themselves to me and said, I'm a student. I said, I'm a student forever. If you don't learn every day, and I have learned so much from the seed and from the soil and from the earthworm and from the butterflies and from our farmers and our women. I am so humble compared to the days I worked in India's fast breeder reactor, where my head was up in the sky in arrogance. I was the only woman in the entire establishment. And you felt, I have to be smart to be here. And then you learn slowly to be humble and modest, where you realize the microbes in the soil and the microbes in your gut are working with huge intelligence. And it's an intelligence we need to start respecting. So the dharma of food, or the ethics of food, guides all the plural and diverse assessments of food, health, agriculture, seeds, biodiversity, climate change. It defines our relationship with the soil and the earth and the land and the community and society through the food we eat and grow. And it shapes our relationship with food itself as central to our ecological being, our spiritual being, our well-being in terms of health, and the ability of society to hold together as community. Food binds us. Real food creates community. Fake food ruptures community. The holding together comes with soil. We have an ancient Veda which says, in this handful of soil is the future. Take care of it, it will take care of you. Destroy it, it will destroy you. Look at history. Look at the disappearance of every civilization. It was based on the destruction of soil. And look at the history of lasting civilizations. And that's why I feel both proud of India having taken care of the soil, but also worried that these days we are neglecting it. And I'm watching our soil getting desertified. There's a recent UN report out from the IPES, which it's an intergovernmental policy body on research on climate change, biodiversity, and ecosystem functions. And they have warned that our neglect of soil is threatening a large part of humanity. And I have watched this happen in my own country, where villages are empty as they've become new refugees. We've done a study called Terra Viva, published by Vandana, in the year of soil, but it was also the year of a large number of refugee boats sinking in the Mediterranean. We looked at 2 countries from where refugees were coming. One was Syria, from where there had been no refugees. Syria hadn't even participated in the Arab Spring. 2009, they had a severe drought, a climate extreme. But before that, they had had the practice of non-sustainable farming, which was considered the only farming over the last 50 years. Chemical farming, green revolution farming, where farmers were not allowed to use their native seeds, had to use the seeds bred for chemical inputs, which required 10 times more water to produce the same amount of yield. But in the process, all the groundwater was gone. And when the drought came, it led to total failure. 1 million farmers left their villages because of crop failure and livestock death. That then triggered the instability, because under the rules of structural adjustment, which are implemented by the World Bank, which are the same rules as a permanent structural adjustment in the WTO, governments cannot support farmers. It's called domestic support. There are 3 elements of the WTO Agriculture Treaty. None of it has to do with food. None of it has to do with the health of soil. None of it has to do with the well-being of farmers or the quality of the food we eat. The first is about export competition. The second is about domestic support. And the third is about market access. In fact, market access is first. And it so happens, because I ended up working also on WTO and GATT before that, because of the issue of agriculture. Because I was at a meeting where the company said, we will control the seed through GMOs and patenting, and to ensure that patents are implemented worldwide to get us royalties, we will bring intellectual property into the GATT agreement. This is what led to the trade-related intellectual property rights agreement. The reason there is a TR before IP is because intellectual property is not an international subject. It's a national subject. But they defined it as trade-related, and as Monsanto has said, we were the patient, diagnostician, physician all in one. But 87, I was awake to these issues, so I started to work with our ambassador in Geneva. We brought in exceptions. We said countries may exclude from patentability plants and animals. And for breeders' rights, they can create a sui generis system. I was invited by my government to help write the sui generis laws, which include the farmers' rights. I worked with our parliament to ensure that the exclusion allowed in WTO was implemented in national law. We have an Article 3J which says, plants, animals, seeds, and any part thereof are not human inventions. Now, for 20 years, my dear, dear friend, the construct called Monsanto, which is merging and genetically being engineered into a buyer right now, for 20 years, they've been pretending they have a patent in India. For 20 years, I've been trying to tell our government, our farmers, courts, they don't have a patent. Just before I left for Taiwan, we won a very important victory in the Supreme Court of India, where the Supreme Court said, yes, we have an article that doesn't allow you to have a patent. So guess what they are now saying. Just like earlier it was said the soil is an empty container for pouring nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium into, they are now saying the seed is an empty container for putting their chemical into. So they want a patent on their chemical. It's just that it produces a super plant. A container and a super plant, it is fake science. You get fake food from fake science. It's not just fake because it forgot interconnectedness. It forgot that food is life, that is produced through processes of life, processes in the soil, processes of the sun, where the sun shining through photosynthesis gives you everything that we need, all the food, all the fiber. As Albert Howard was sent to India in 1905 to improve Indian agriculture. And he arrived in India. He found the soils were fertile. He found there were no pests in the fields. And he says in his book that he wrote called The Agricultural Testament, which is called the Bible of Modern Organic Farming, and Taiwan should translate it into Chinese. It's a very important book. It's the book that made sense to me when I was doing my research on Punjab and the Green Revolution. And he said, if the peasants of India know how to manage pests and soil fertility, I'm going to make them my professors. And also make professors of the pests to understand from the pests how to work with them so they don't destroy our crop. And Albert Howard wrote in his book, the energy for growth is derived from the sun. The chlorophyll in the green leaf is the mechanism by which this energy is intercepted. The efficiency of the green leaf is therefore of supreme importance. On it depends the food supply of the planet, our well-being and our activity. There is no alternative source of nutriment. Without sunlight and the green leaf, our industries, our trade, our possessions would soon be useless. It's just that we push this process further and further away from our awareness. And the switch from soil to oil, as is the title of one of my books, is a switch from an ethics that relates to living carbon, which is being built daily and in which we have a role to play to enhance its production, to participate in more maximization of biodiversity, biodiversity intensification. We are depending on 600 million years of nature's fossilization process and burning up 20 million every year. That is why we have climate change. The theme of this conference is related to the issue of climate change. I wrote Soil Not Oil because I could see on the ground how so much of the problem began in industrial farming. The three most important greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, of course, and one of the biggest users of fossil fuels is now our food system. Whether it be in using 2 liters of diesel to produce 1 kilogram of nitrogen fertilizer, which is used based on the same method in which explosives were made. That is why so many bombs today are fertilizer bombs, whether it be Oslo, the Oslo bombings, Oklahoma bombings, Afghanistan. I was at a conference where a very senior security official of the US, after my talk, came up to me. He says, now I understand why there's so much bombing. Because we gave them sacks and sacks and sacks of urea to try and wean them away from the Soviets. And now they're equipped to make bombs, which was the original purpose. Anyway. But not only do fertilizers use a lot of fossil fuels, they emit a second greenhouse gas, nitrous oxide, which is 300 times more destabilizing for the climate. And when you globalize your food system, you create huge amounts of food waste. 50% of the food in the industrial world is wasted. Why is it wasted? Because globalized systems, long-distance systems, industrial systems based on external inputs require monocultures and uniformity. Uniformity destroys diversity. I have seen the best apple trees not being harvested because Walmart suddenly decided this is the size of apple they will sell, and the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement of the WTO, written again by our food processing industry, defines safety as a Cartesian measure. Not in the quality of what is in it, Not the toxics in it, not the nutritional empty food, but the size. You bring a vernier caliper and measure. And does it go through the tray or does not go through the tray? And I say this is an insult to food. Because how is a cucumber with character unsafe? How is a carrot, which might decide to have a different size, unsafe? Descartes has ruined the world with his thinking that all there is mass and dimension. The world is potential and quality and process. And in a Cartesian world, they don't exist. They literally measure food safety with trays. 80% of the food gets thrown away because it was the wrong size. I was told by South Africans that overnight the apples were wrong because Walmart changed the size of its trucks. Therefore, the size of the crates had to change. Therefore, the size of the apples that go into the trays that had to change. Aren't we doing it the wrong way? Shouldn't we begin with the apple seed? Recognize that every apple that is given by the apple tree is delicious. If we grow it organically, it's healthy. Let diversity be recognized as the expression of life and the food system. We have always bred crops for diversity, for resilience, for taste, quality, nutrition. That is the basis of all breeding. That's why in India we could evolve 200,000 rice varieties, including the beautiful basmati from my valley, which a company in Texas claimed to have invented. And I had to fight that case. As Monsanto claimed to have invented an old wheat variety of India, because our wheats do not give gluten allergies. Gluten allergies are not because wheat has gluten, but because the industrial wheats have been bred to express more gluten. Traditional wheats have a silencing gene. They have the gluten, but it doesn't affect your gut. And then when the gluten molecule is absolutely identical in every wheat plant that you're growing, our gut feels it's being attacked. That's why you're getting allergies. And all over the world now, old wheats are coming back as a response to this new allergy humanity is facing. There's a scientist in Washington State who's gone back to native varieties and found that they can reverse gluten allergies. I work with Dr. Ceccarelli, who's one of the world's most important plant breeders. He used to work in Ikada, which was in Aleppo, which has been bombed in the Syria war. He started to do participatory breeding with farmers of Syria. A baker picked up some of the wheats. He also started this process in Iran. The bakery became very popular because people who couldn't eat wheat products earlier could now start eating wheat products. The baker is now opening bakeries in different places, and the farmers are able to grow their traditional wheats. Because now the measure has shifted from being how much is the yield of the stuff to what is the quality of what you grow and its impact on your health. Real food makes us healthy. Fake food creates allergies, deficiencies, and all the limitless chronic diseases that are killing us faster than communicable diseases are in today's time. They have been named lifestyle diseases. We call them food style diseases because the biggest part of the lifestyle that's causing health damage, obesity, diabetes, are all related to the issue of food. That's why we brought out a book called Food as Health. The company, Monsanto, when it patented the Indian wheat, I had to go to our Supreme Court on this issue. And the judge said, "Are you suggesting, Dr. Shiva, that one company will control our daily bread?" And I said, "Yeah, the prayer, 'Give us this day our daily bread,' could fast become a prayer to Monsanto, which is now becoming Bayer. And this diversity of producers of seed, producers of food, producers of knowledge are being reduced to a cartel of three. They began in the war. At the GATT, they used to talk about how there'll be 5. They are now 3. Bayer has merged with Monsanto, Dow has merged with DuPont, and Syngenta has merged with ChemChina. When I started this work in the GATT, there was no Syngenta. There wasn't even a Novartis. There was a Ciba and a Sandoz and an Astra and a Zeneca. They're merging and merging and merging. I call this the logic of the cancer cell. Every cell in our body knows when to stop growing. That's part of its being a living organism that is self-organized, self-regulated, in interconnectedness with other organisms. But when a cell doesn't know how to stop growing and has to predate on that on which it sustains itself, you get cancer. We've developed a food system and an economic model that has become like a cancer on the planet, a cancer literally for our bodies. For the planet, 75% of all soil destruction, 75% of all water destruction, 75% of all biodiversity destruction in plants alone. If you take insects and birds and pollinators, it's even higher. That is the reason in Europe they've just had to ban the neonicotinoids, which have been recognized as contributing to death of bees. And why do you use it? To coat the seed. Why do you coat the seed? Because you've destroyed the soil and its healthy fungi, so that now you have to put all kinds of toxics because your soil is full of pathogenic fungi and bacteria, just as much as our gut is becoming. The 3 big diversities that are totally interconnected and at the heart of real food are the diversity in the soil, which makes for nutrition. We think when we put nitrogen into the soil, we increase nitrogen availability. Look at the figures. We've just completed a 20-year study in our valley, in Doon Valley. In the organic farms, in chemical farms, organic matter went down 14% and nitrogen went down 22%. In the organic farms, organic matter went up 99% and nitrogen went up 100%. Now, both of these are indicators of how to deal with climate change. Because with the use of fossil fuel, we've put too much carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide in the atmosphere. You could have renewable energy, but at best you stop future emissions. Only that photosynthesis of the plant and the cycle of carbon and the cycle of nitrogen through organic systems have a way of pulling down the stocks. The calculations were made during the Paris Agreement. The French government launched a 4 in 1,000% initiative that we should have at least 0.4% organic matter in the soils. Actually, and it translates with enough organic matter of the kind we've built up on our farms. We actually can pull down all the excess stocks that the fossil fuel age and industrial farming had put into this. So while 50% of the greenhouse gases are coming from an industrial model of food, and when I talk about the 50%, includes all the greenhouse gases from the production, It includes all the greenhouse gases from the long food miles. We are literally eating oil. We are using 10 units of fossil fuel to put in and then get 1 unit of food out as a calorie. When ecologically, the living systems of plants have given us the amazing capacity to work with 1 unit of input and create 10 units of food as energy. That is true productivity. This is pseudo-productivity of fake food. Then you process, you destroy more, you put that food as feed into herbivores. Herbivores means they liked herbs, right? That's why they're called herbivores. Now you're feeding them intensive feed. 90% of the corn and soya being grown in the world is not grown for eating by humans. It's being grown for biofuel and animal feed. It stopped being a food system. Industrial, globalized food system is an anti-food system. I call it anti-food both because it's destroying the soil. All you have to do is go to Brazil and go to Argentina. I've been there for the scientists. It's unbelievable. These fertile, rich rainforest lands are becoming desertified. The biodiversity, of course, is being destroyed. The indigenous people are being shot and killed because they're coming in the way. And all of that then travels around the world to torture animals when we should be having nice, good, grass-fed beef. And I keep telling my vegan friends, okay, yeah, you don't like meat. It's good. But then why do you like genetically engineered fake meat in the lab? There's so much diversity in the world. Be part of the process of protecting that diversity, enhancing it, so that you have a better diet. Our health and well-being in real food begins with the soil, which gives us more nutrients. Our surveys are also showing that with organic, you actually have an increase in the micronutrients and trace elements, whereas in the chemical farming, going down, zinc is a huge deficiency. It's increased 14% on our farms. It's gone down 37% in the chemical farms. Magnesium, 17% decrease in the chemical farms, 14% increase in the organic farms. Why does zinc matter? Australian friends in public health are telling me half the teenagers of Australia are depressed when they did the biochemistry of the brain zinc deficiency. The Naked Ape, the famous chef of England, gave organic food. The children stopped being violent, stopped having attention deficit disorder. They figured out more magnesium. Lack of magnesium is leading to the attention deficit disorder. But these micronutrients and trace elements did not even figure in either the input vocabulary or in the food vocabulary, because just like the soil was made an empty container and the plant was made a machine whose fuel is the chemical fertilizer, our bodies were made machines whose fuel is any old stuff. But remember the mad cow disease? They said it doesn't matter. You could feed the cows grass or natural grain or rendered meat. Rendered meat meant dead cows, infected cows. First sheep, then cows were fed to sheep and cows. Created the mad cow disease, the spongiform. They said it wouldn't transmit to humans. It transmitted to humans. When 12 humans got it and died, that's when England woke up and the studies were actually done. Till then you had fake science defending a fake feed for animals. At the end of it, when they had looked, of course when you looked at the nutritional reductionism, the right amount of protein, the right amount of calcium, it was all perfect, but it didn't tell you where it came from. It had changed the nature of the protein. A Nobel Prize was given for the prion, the deformed protein. Now, in my philosophy, in our culture, we don't talk of just 4 basic elements. We talk of 5 basic elements, and the 5th is space. Space is what tells you that a protein might have the same compositional structure, but it doesn't have the same spatial structure. The change in spatial structure changes it into a self-infective agent. It wasn't an external virus, it wasn't an external bacteria. That is why all food safety based on compositional analysis is pseudoscience. Because I'm trained in quantum theory, I knew all along that that one cause, one effect, linear causality is not adequate to understand a complex and living world. We need 4-dimensional causality for complex systems, where the 3 dimensions of space and the 4th dimension of time explains the process. That is why it's vital to go away from this nutritionism that only tells you the ingredient without telling you how the ingredient came to be in the food. Real food uses the complexity and intelligence of every level of the food system to create what is food. In a fake food system, every level has an intervention. And that intervention begins with chemical inputs in the production methods, chemical inputs in the processing methods, chemical inputs for long distance shelf life, chemical inputs for ensuring that bad food tastes good. I mean, that was the whole secret of MSG. Remember, there was a natural seaweed-derived MSG in East Asia. But the stuff they were making as a byproduct of extraction of fat from dead carcasses, that MSG had to be banned in many places, and you actually see a label in menus, MSG-free restaurant. But the only function it had was to change your neurological behavior. And the only reason you needed to have neurological behavior is because you've emptied out the food of taste and you're eating rubbish. Just today I was reading a paper that's saying that when your food is nutritionally empty and chemically grown industrial food is nutritionally empty, then you have to eat more of it because you are not satisfied. There's a very good film called Super Size Me on McDonald's Super Size. That's someone who lives on a McDonald's diet, and this journalist tried to live on that diet for 1 month. You're never satisfied. Because what is satisfaction? Satisfaction is the ethics of your gut microbe. They are now realizing, our philosophy of Ayurveda always said the gut is the most important part of human health and the human body. We were laughed at by the reductionist mechanistic science. No, you can put anything into the stomach. Nothing will matter. We are a machine. It'll all go through. High fructose corn syrup, same as natural sugar. Solvent extraction with hexane, doesn't matter at all. And we've been pumped with fake food. Only in the last 10 years, in cutting-edge modern science, is the gut microbiome coming up. We have more, between 10 trillion to 100 trillion microbes in our gut. Each of them has a different function. In the gut lining are sensors that work with these microbes. The sensors are different tastes. Ayurveda said you must eat 6 tastes for a balanced diet. They're now finding out if you don't have the balance of the tastes, which Descartes said doesn't exist, taste doesn't exist. He should have looked at the sensory organs in our gut. We are only 10% human cells. In our gut are 100,000 more microbes than people on the planet. That should make us both humble as well as careful. That's where ethics begins. Now, For me, it is shocking. My sister's a medical doctor. She keeps going off to WHO. I think she's right now in Geneva for an antibiotic resistance meeting. We've pumped so much antibiotics into food, particularly factory farms, that now everyone has antibiotic resistance. But when we eat fake food, which is also acting as an antibiotic, it's killing the gut bacteria. One of the most widely spread chemicals that has caused huge scientific and ethical debates is Roundup, based on glyphosate, used as a weed killer. In the 90s, when I was in the negotiations on the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Monsanto representatives used to get up and speak about how they have created a new technology to prevent the weeds from stealing the sunlight. And I said, you don't understand how generous the sun is. And you don't understand that what you call weeds is our food. The amaranth, the batwa. For them, whatever is a companion crop becomes a weed. And at least 250 edible, uncultivated plants are the most nutritious plants in the cuisine of where I come from, North India. I've counted them with the women. They're the sources of rich vitamin A. They're the sources of very, very rich iron. Even the poorest woman, if she has access to it, meets her nutritional needs. But when you decide you have to declare war on diversity, and they used to say, it kills everything green. Then they said, no, it can't affect human health because it kills the plant because the plant has a shikimate pathway, a metabolic system, which is disrupted, and that's how the plant dies. What they didn't tell us was that the bacteria in our gut have the shikimate pathway, and when Roundup residues are hitting our digestive tract, beneficial bacteria are being killed, and many of these organisms, and this is leading to huge epidemic of neurological problems. The bacteria in our gut produce 3 aromatic amino acids, tryptophan, tyrosine, and I can't pronounce it properly, phenylalanine, through the shikimate pathway. Since our cells don't have this pathway, they themselves are unable to make these nutrients, and we depend on our gut bacteria. These essential amino acids are precursors to the neurotransmitters dopamine, serotonin, and melatonin and adrenaline, as well as thyroid hormone, folate, and vitamin E. The killing of gut bacteria leads to deficiency in these important biological molecules and impairs our neurological functions. We have denied humanity this basic knowledge because to push fake food on people for profits alone and profits alone, a fake science industry has been created. I've dealt with it. I mean, my life is a story of dealing with them, including the bullshit award. I think it is a human rights violation to deny all of humanity the right to know what you're eating. In the United States, right now, there's a debate going on. Unlike 64 countries which got mandatory GMO labeling put into place, the United States citizens were denied their right to know what they're eating. 4 states in the West Coast tried to get labeling through a ballot. There was California, Colorado, Oregon, Washington. In every state, huge amounts of money was poured for false advertising. Costs of food will go up, you'll be caught in litigation. People got puzzled. They didn't vote for labeling. The state of Vermont went through the legislative process and got a law passed. Washington, influenced by Monsanto, said a state can't pass the law, and they passed an act which was named by the American citizens the Dark Act, the denial of the right to know what you're eating. Now they've created a cooked up labeling, in which you have to have a smartphone to be able to go home and read the literature. But the literature you'll get is the literature that is fake. The Honorable Dean said, you want to find out about me, go to Google. Don't go to Google, please. Because they changed the Wikipedia pages. They removed my physics degrees. 3 times I had to send the degrees to Wikipedia. It would get added, and then in a second it's out. And I was told by people that all you have to do is pay $50,000 to make sure your piece hits top. You know, this, when you search for the Google, what comes on top isn't what is the most reliable, what's the most read, it's what is the most paid for. So yes, use Google instrumentally, but don't use Google scientifically. For science, do your science yourself. And to know what I do, don't go to Google, come to Dehradun. Come to our beautiful farm where we grow 2,000 varieties, 740 rice varieties. Right now we are in the middle of harvesting 220 wheat varieties, including the wheats that were patented by Monsanto, and the basmati rice patented by Rice Tech. And I feel extremely honored that I was given the opportunity to deal with a piracy of neem. When the Bhopal disaster happened in 1984, I collected neem saplings in Delhi, put them in a bucket and rushed to Bhopal. Started a campaign, no more Bhopals, let us plant neem. Neem is a natural product that is a pest control agent. It's called the tree with 1,000 uses. They used to say superstition, you know, Indian superstition. In 94 it was patented for pest control. I took the challenge up. 100,000 signatures of Indians were taken to the European Patent Office. They were also taken to the US Patent Office, but the US Patent Office said, what's your commercial interest? And we said, we have none, we have a public interest. They said, no, we don't consider public interest. We just consider commercial fights between greedy people. So you have to be a greedy people to get to the European Patent Office. Well, in Europe, after 11 years, we won that case. We have neem for safe food. Don't have to spray toxic pesticides. The real food issue also rests on real price and true cost. The so-called cheap food, which is industrial, is very high cost to the planet, very high cost to the health, very high cost to the farmers. Farmers in a globalized system, driven by big industry, are not getting the fair price and the full price. That's why they're being driven out of work. That is why 300,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide. That is why Farmer Lee committed suicide from Korea in Cancun and said, I am taking my life so you can wake up to what is happening to our food providers. Only real farmers will give us real food. Real farmers are needed to solve the climate problem, to solve the health problem, to solve the water problem, to solve the refugee problem, to solve the problems of disharmony and conflict. I'm very happy that Taiwan has actually started to pass laws that make a difference. The law on governing, this was yesterday when I went to meet the Vice President, the Organic Agriculture Promotion Act, before that the School Health Act. And every time a country does what it should do for its people under its constitution, through its democratic processes, we have this ugly instrument of the WTO and the threats on unilateral action. I think it is time to rewrite the rules of trade so that they are respectful of the planet, they're respectful of people's rights, they're respectful of our farmers. This is the work I'm doing. This year, we are organizing a very big biodiversity congress in October. If you go to the Navdanya website, Navdanya, you will find this congress. In the biodiversity congress, while it is deeply scientific, it also has the sense that we are we have to build an ecological civilization. And within that civilization, we have to think of food, the production, its eating, as an ecological act, not as a manufacturing act. Food is not an industrial product. Food is life. It must nourish the earth. It must nourish us. Anything else is a violation of the rights of Mother Earth and our human rights. We need to look into the future and have a future, because on the current trends, if you look at these hockey stick graphs of climate change, CO2, autism, look at any graph, it's like that. We have less than a century as a species on this planet. Less than a century. Even Richard Hawking, not Richard Hawking, Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking said, before he passed, he gave an interview that within a century humanity might be extinct. Well, food is a way to avoid extinction while protecting the earth, protecting ourselves, and building community peace and harmony in these little acts of growing food and eating with consciousness are solutions to very big problems of our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shiva. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for Dr. Shiva. Truly enlightened and insightful talk. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shiva. I myself learned a lot from your talk. As a dean of the College of Bioresources and Agriculture, one most important mission for our college is producing food. And now I'm thinking, at what cost are we producing food? Real food or fake food? I think it's also a big challenge for our college. Next meeting with our directors next week, I will ask our directors for each department. Are we producing real food or fake food? And how can we provide the real food? And on what kind of basis in science? Yeah, I think after the talk, you may have a lot of thinking or question in mind. Due to the limit of time, we have to stop here for Dr. Shiva's talk. But next section, we will have a very good panel discussion. So now we will have a 10-minute break.
Yes.
Okay. So we will save time for the panel discussion. So please announce your procedure.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand to our moderator, Professor Liu. Thank you. And both of the professors that will present 15 minutes, and later on we will invite Dr. Shiva to give them comments. And later on we're going to open the floor to all of you, and if you have any questions, please seize the opportunity to ask our renowned scholars. And now, Professor Liu, the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to host the panel discussion. We have 3 panelists for the discussion. Our lady already introduced them. The first is Professor Lin Guoqi from National Taiwan University. And the lady is Professor Cai Yanlin from Jiao Tong University. And the other one, you already recognized her, Dr. Shiva. Later, she will give us very short comments. Then we will have an open discussion for the audience. So firstly, I would like to introduce Dr. Lin Guoqi. Give us 15 minutes about the topic today. It's a paradigm shift. So please join me to welcome Professor Lin Guoqi.
Our distinguished speaker, Dr. Vandana Shiva, and Dean of Bioresource and Agriculture, National Taiwan University, Dr. Lu Sheng, and the Department Head of Bioindustry Communication and Development, National Taiwan University, Wang Junhao, and Professor Cai Lim Ye, and the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. And I feel honored to be invited to join the Shiva Forum and to have this opportunity to present some of my observations on this issue, and hopefully this might stimulate some discussions. Of course, I would like to use this precious opportunity to have a direct dialogue with Dr. Shiva, and I have received the assigned theme of this forum, which is a paradigm shift and the sustainability of agriculture, and following is my presentation. Of course, firstly, I would like to say thank you very much. In the first session, I heard a great presentation from Dr. Shiva on real food and fake food. And I think I'm here actually after hear all this. I am so-called a minority. Actually, I'm economist. I've been teaching university for 34 years. And 18 years ago, I was the Minister of Agriculture of Council of Agriculture in Taiwan. I just retired last year from National Taiwan University, and currently I am a Director of Food and Fertilizer Technology Center for the Asian and Pacific region. So I am not here to defend technology and fertilizer, but I think probably from another point of view to look at this very important issue for not just for our survival, it's also for the survival for the earth and for the humankind. And this is the main content. So firstly, this is about the United Nations SDG and the challenge of food and culture, current world situation. And of course, I will give a brief introduction of FFTC and the new agriculture policy in Taiwan. And then I will answer, can paradigm shift to solve the problem? And at the end, the brief conclusion of the observation of new paradigm and sustainability. So there are 17 goals of SDG by United Nations by 2030. Of course, this SDG 1 is the most important, is no poverty. The second one is no hunger. So if you don't solve the poverty problem and the hunger problem, we don't think this can be solved. Of course, about the real food and fake food is about health. The number 3 SDG is good health and well-being. And the SDG 2, zero hunger, is to end all forms of hunger and malnutrition by 2030, making sure all people, especially children, have access to sufficient and nutritious food all year round. And of course, this involves promoting sustainable agricultural practices, including supporting small-scale farmers and allowing equal access to land, technology, and markets. And it also requires international cooperation to ensure investment in infrastructure and technology to improve agricultural productivity. So main issue in the future of food until 2050, and it's identified as the sustainability, health, food safety, innovation, and the food culture. So the serious topic in the future food 2050 is identified as climate change, sustainable water, promoting technology, nutrition, innovation, food safety, alternative proteins, trimming global obesity rates, kitchen of the future, innovative agriculture, food security, and nutrition in Africa, food waste, of course, most important also is the women in food science. And the challenge of food and agriculture, and I think this challenge is also an opportunity, and we have to assess the impacts. And we emphasize the global cooperation and the integration. And we also have to consider vulnerability and the flexibility. And of course, agriculture a continuous productive increase is very important, and improve the competitiveness of the industry. Because anyway, whether you like it or not, we have to depend on trade and to get the sufficient food. And then food security and the farmers' income and the rural poverty also is a very serious issue we have to look into, and the sustainable agricultural development. And the current world situation, so there's more than enough food produced in the world now to feed everyone, and yet 850 million people still go hungry. And but this is our goal. So by 2030, we have to end the hunger problem. However, in order to do this, especially this estimated by 2050, the total food production will need to increase by 50% globally. And this actually is a great challenge. And also it's alarming that, of course, there's a trend that the world hunger has been decreasing. However, 2 years ago, this world hunger is on the rise. And there is also an issue about the multiple burden of malnutrition, especially for children, and also the fat problem, this obesity problem. This is concerned. Another one is if we want to solve this problem, and it said that the conflict within the country or in the region, and this is also the problem we have to solve, because this is correlated with each other. When you have a conflict, so normally you will create this kind of hunger problem. So they all asked me to introduce FFTC, Food and Fertilizer Technological Center. And our mission of this center, this is international organization. I'm a director, and our deputy director is from Japan, and he's from Nero. So it's promote the sustainable agriculture and the food development in the Asian and Pacific region, and to increase the income and welfare for farm household in the Asian and Pacific region, and promote information technological transfer for sustainable agricultural development. So, but FFTC is not the research center, it's an information center. So the mechanism for technical transfer is identify the problem and the issues, and collect and sharing and exchange of information, and dissemination of technological transfer, and then the goal is to promote sustainable development for the Asian and Pacific region. So the main activities, actually, we are holding a lot of international conference and workshop, just like today we are here. And so this is international conference we held last year. And last year we held 7 international conferences outside of Taiwan, and we have held 2 international conferences in Taiwan. So the projects, we have a strategic action plan for 2016 and 2017. Is upholding the small-scale farming under climate change, to promote food safety with green agriculture, to promote market value adding in small-scale farming, and then strengthen small-scale farming under free trade, and to increase the young generation to engage in farming. So our international workshop, the topic is focused on knowledge management, ICT agriculture, the role of agricultural cooperatives to change in food consumption trend. So this is the topics for each international workshop. And we also have agricultural policy platform. So in this platform, you will be able to see the policy papers for 10 countries in the Asian Pacific region. And nowadays, almost every day, on average, is more than 6,000 people will visit this website. And also we have publications like annual report, and also we have a newsletter, and to share the information. So for this year, again, we also have many international workshops. We just finished the one on pitaya. We are going to set up an international network for the dragon fruit in this region. Of course, we welcome the people, experts from the world to join. And for this year international workshop, we also have two international workshop on fertilizer. Emphasize on the smart use of fertilizer and how to avoid this kind of negative impact. So the second one is a brief introduction of new agriculture policy in Taiwan. And the policy vision is develop a sustainable, inclusive agriculture, nurture happier farmers, provide safe food, and create a more prosperous rural community, and emphasize on environment-friendly, consumer-friendly, and farmer-friendly. So for environment-friendly, the policies on green payment, organic farming, soil and water conservation, and circular agriculture. So here, there's one word, is similar to the topic, the theme we discussed today. It's called Establish New Agriculture Paradigm. This will include implement farmland green payment system, stabilize the farmers' income, upgrade the livestock industry to promote environment-friendly farming and the sustainable usage of agricultural resources, and promote innovative agriculture. Of course, food security and food safety and also rural development is very important. And for the market, and to enhance agriculture marketing is one of the very important policy for Taiwanese agriculture policy. So this is the direct green payment on farmland. So government will pay the direct payment for environmental friendly organic production, and also for those adopt the crop system is the energy and water saving, and also is a rotating crop system. Also, government encouraged to grow import subsidy crops, and also if you maintain a basic farmland management, government also will give you a direct payment. And the stabilized farmers' income is to promote the agriculture insurance program for crops, livestock, and agriculture policies, and provide professional and young farmers with the necessary assistance, including technical learning system access of farmland and agricultural law. And of course, environment-friendly farming is very important. Okay, she said I have only 3 minutes, so I will just jump. Okay, so can a paradigm shift solve the problem? So, and from here you can see that this is a very important problem. Is that you always look at farmers' income. So in Taiwan, you can see that the farmers' income since 1991 has been on the downward trend. And if we design a policy, and if the farmers' income cannot be taken care of, always there's a very much difficulty to promote the environmentally friendly policy. And also, the cultivated land area has been decreasing. On average, it's more than 3,000 hectares a year. And also, the multiple crops index has been decreasing, and the set-aside area has been increasing. Of course, now it's a decreasing trend. And this is abandoned land, or the set-aside land, as actually is been increasing. And also, the food self-sufficiency rate in Taiwan has been long-term decreasing, now down to almost around 30%. And also per capita consumption of rice has been decreasing. Now Taiwan's rice consumption is the lowest in the world. So what is our vision for the agriculture policy? Is agriculture enjoyed by the whole nation, and a competitive agriculture, rural area with amenity and a sustainable environment. So the role of agriculture, there's one role is market goods and agriculture development. And we believe this must face the market competition, and now it's a non-market goods function. And we need to strengthen non-tradable goods function. Of course, here is a functional of the agriculture is the thing we emphasize. And the Taiwanese agriculture, we have our strengths, but we have weakness. It's the scarcity of natural resources, expensive natural resources, and a small farm size, and so the cost of production is quite high. So So now I will come to the end. So new paradigm is sustainability. So look into the future, I think the momentum to promote environment-friendly organic farming will persist. And properly, adequately using updated technology to provide sufficient and affordable food for the world. I just 1 minute, I will stop, okay? And to meet the challenges of the SDG 1, SDG 2, no poverty and no hunger by 2030, fairness and justice, I think it's a very important issue. Most of the world population, and I believe, will still be fed by non-organic but safe agricultural products. So how to provide the safe agricultural products, the real food, I think is very important. So moving toward more support for the multi-functionality of agriculture. And the sustainability issue will gain more attention, but moving toward a new paradigm with efficient and fair institutions and policies, I think still has a long way to go. So the continuous articulation of the real issues and the continuous research, dialogue, and the communication, I think it's still very important and is needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lin. He already pointed out some challenges we are facing, including how to feed our Taiwan people even in a healthy way, and how to cope with climate change and other kind of challenges. So I think Dr. Shiva may have some comments on Dr. Lin's proposals or ideas later. Next, our panelist is Professor, what's your name? Tai Lin. So please keep using a few minutes to introduce yourself and then propose your idea. So please join me to welcome Professor Tai.
Thank you. It's my great honor and pleasure to be here today, to join all of you in attending the first Asia Pacific Society for Agriculture and Food Ethics Conference held in Taiwan, and in particular to join Dr. Shiva and Dr. Lin in this forum on agricultural paradigm shift and sustainability. Being a part-time farmer and a full-time anthropologist without any formal training in modern agricultural sciences, I believe my very presence in this forum is itself a testament to the paradigm shift in agriculture. Several landmark events do make this theme extremely timely and therefore all the more important at this moment. In January 2018, the Agricultural Council of Taiwan launched a new farm subsidy scheme to encourage local, non-GMO, and eco-friendly farming. In February, the Council revised the current Farmers' Health and Social Benefits Plan to cover tenant farmers. These are the farmers that I work with and live with in Ilan. In April, in Rome, the UN FAO officially called for transformative change towards sustainable agriculture and food systems based on agroecology, and launched a 10-year initiative on scaling up agroecology. And just 2 days ago, on May 8th, Taiwan witnessed the birth of the first Organic Agriculture Promotion Act, thanks to the tireless efforts by many who are with us in this room today. After many years of grassroots campaigning and hands-on practice of thousands of pioneering farmers, an agricultural paradigm shift towards eco-friendly farming is finally gaining institutional momentum in Taiwan. And with that, our agriculture and the larger food system are gradually breaking free from the post-war fossil fuel-based production center paradigm, while transforming towards a more inclusive and multifunctional reconceptualization of what agriculture is and what agriculture should and can do for the future. Indeed, as our conference theme, Climate Change and Food Challenge for the Future suggests, future is the key word here. Besides changes in farming methods and public policies, in my view, what's even more significant about this paradigm shift, or actually what I think really qualifies this change as paradigmatic, is the change in meaning and value of agriculture in recent decades. In short, agriculture has enjoyed a brave comeback from being thought of as the traditional, residual, and backward mode of production, awaiting to be replaced by industrialization, to become a forward-looking realm of practices that, if done correctly, could be an antidote to the many negative consequences of modern urbanism, including climate change. Elsewhere, I've called this reparative comeback of agriculture a renaissance, 农业复兴, which has given agriculture a new set of rationality, sensibility, and temporality in the 21st century. This transformation, I believe, is part of the larger probiotic term of our time, in Oxford geographer Jamie Lorimer's term, which is in sharp contrast to the antibiotic approach of the 19th and 20th centuries health environmental management. So my presentation today will center around my experience of working and living with a community of smallholder farmers in Taiwan, whose practice of agricultural paradigm shift is, I think, good to think with. In 2009, I moved back to Taiwan after a long absence of 11 years. One of the major decisions I made at the time was to leave Taipei and to live in Ilan, the hometown of my parents. They left behind when I was 3 years old. Little did I know at the time that I would join a larger movement of urban to rural reverse migration, through which more and more so-called 返乡青年, the homebound youth, are reconfiguring the rural and urban dynamics in Taiwan. Meanwhile, local discourse of food sovereignty were also on the rise, drawing conscientious urban consumers to smallholder food producers in the countryside. In 2012, I co-founded a women's cooperative farm with 3 friends. One of them is here with me today. We called ourselves Land-Dike Feminist Farm, or 土拉克农场, 用土地拉客 in Mandarin Chinese, or Tolaku Farm in Taiwanese. 大家都知道土拉克是什么 Okay. In 2017, Land-Dike Farm increased to 6 members. As of now, this year, 2018, we independently manage 1.7 hectares of rice paddies, 0.1 hectares of vegetables, 0.1 hectares of bamboo garden for bamboo shoot production, plus 0.5 hectares of citrus orchard under the mentorship of an experienced fruit farmer. The project, our common goal, is to create an all-female, community-supported agricultural farm, cultivating biodiversity and gender diversity at the same time. So because of Land-Dike, every spring my life is a race between the rice paddy and the university. I go to the rice paddy to check on water levels first thing in the morning and replace some seedlings that have been eaten by golden apple snails or 福寿螺 the previous night. Then it's teaching and researching during the day, and then back to hand snail picking in the paddy at night for 2 hours before sleep. So first imported to Taiwan in 1979, 福寿螺 was a food source. The snails have become a major agricultural pest to Taiwan, feeding our rice seedlings. Hand picking is by far the most effective but also labor-intensive method of snail removal, by which farmers can minimize the damage of golden apple snails while keeping the rest of the paddy animals alive. So it is more ecologically friendly than the state-sanctioned and certified organic rice farming method, which encourage farmers to use camellia seeds, kuchapo, as a pesticide and kills, unfortunately, the majority of paddy creatures along with the golden apple snails. So Land-Dike Farm is only one of thousands of new farming units that have appeared in Taiwan since 2000. In comparison with farms of the past, a higher percentage of new farmers now adopt eco-friendly farming. In Ilan in particular, a group of like-minded farmers have started to self-identify as 友善小农, or friendly smallholder farmers, in order to distinguish ourselves from the certified organic farmers, 有机认证, rather than privileging humans and their desired crop. More and more farmers, I conclude, are trying to find ways to thrive together with other non-human species within fields. So in short, Landai Farm and other friendly farmers have witnessed the resurgence of ecological farming in Taiwan in the beginning of the 21st century. However, I want to point out, we have also witnessed and actually in part contributed to a concurrent way of farmland speculation. Since year 2000, the landholding system in Taiwan has shifted from the post-World War II farmland owned by farmers policy to a farmland for farm use policy, allowing non-farmers to buy farmland provided that they keep the farmland for agricultural use, nominally speaking. The result was the surging of farmland prices all over Taiwan over the next 2 decades. Since the opening of a highway connecting Yilan to the capital city of Taipei, here we are in 2006, average land prices in Yilan has increased by 2 to 3-fold. This has led to a rather ironic phenomenon, and this is important, I believe, that Landai and the other so-called friendly farmers are using low input, least energy intensive, and more cost-efficient farming methods on what is now very likely the most expensive farmland in the world. So this deep irony I'm trying to paint here entails a more ambivalent understanding about the agricultural paradigm shift in Taiwan, as experienced from the ground up. As an anthropologist, I believe that it is always worthwhile and important to engage the world in both its entangled livability and new forms of violence and death. The mainstream media often tells stories of new farmers as people who are running away to the countryside to escape office life and start life anew. But to me, in a very tangible way, what friendly farmers encounter in Taiwanese countryside is in fact ecological and social ruins, wastelands, resulting from a long regional and transnational history of uneven development done in the name of progress. Think, for example, about the farmland left fallow due to foreign agricultural imports since Taiwan joined the WTO in 2003. Or think of those irrigation channels with water quality so poor that only golden apple cells could survive. Think of also the acidified soil in vegetable fields from years of excessive fertilization. And think of the old farmers in dialysis treatment from years of pesticide poisoning. These are ecological ruins created by an ever-expanding transnational industrial food regime, which our government is still trying hard to further integrate. Likewise, I invite you all to also think of the village elders being taken care of by Southeast Asian migrant domestic workers, or of the elementary schools facing shutdown year after year due to low enrollment rates, which resulted from the flow of rural to urban out-migration combined with Taiwan's world lowest fertility rate, which in turn has to do with Taiwan being one of the top 5 longest working countries in the world. The empty schools and houses in the countryside are the social ruins created by Taiwan's export-based economy, which has failed to deliver the famous multiplier effect of employment and income growth that it theoretically should have delivered. What has happened instead is that after the countryside has been gutted of its resource, youth, and talent, thousands of empty farmhouses, so-called farmhouses owned by nominal farmers, now stand obtrusively in the middle of thousands of rice paddies in Yilan, further convincing our old farmers that they should cash out from agriculture once and for all by selling their farmland to speculators in exchange for an apartment in the city, which promises better opportunities for long-term familial upward mobility. What does it mean? However, what I find most interesting about the paradigm shift I've witnessed in Yilan and other parts of rural Taiwan is that when human and non-human species meet each other in these ecological and social wastelands, things start to change. When working poor youth met fallow paddies, they turned the overabundance of weeds into those former wastelands, into biodiversity, much appreciated by the UN Satoyama initiative. When golden apple snails were given the chance to survive in friendly farmers' paddy fields, they become an extra source of income for the farmers through selling to snail merchants who prefer the quality of chemical-free snails. When former office workers encountered rural elementary schools in danger of closing, they started to bring vegetables grown by old villagers to elementary school lunch tables, triggering the interest of the school principal to further invite old and new farmers to teach students how to use eco-friendly farming methods to plant rice. The process was promptly recorded by young farmers who later turned these stories into award-winning publications. While some people might prefer to tell these as heroic stories, to me they are in fact stories of post-survival, of human and non-human refugees helping each other out and turning industrial and neoliberal ruins into livable and inhabitable refugia. That is, places that shelter, foster, nourish, and replenish various life forms. That is, places where one can live a meaningful life instead of bare life. And so far, all of these are done with relatively little industrial support. Autonomous and spontaneous, these cases are among the best instantiations of agricultural multifunctionality in the fullest sense of the term. By regenerating local knowledge and social alliances, as well as promoting identity and culture that strengthen local economies, they rebuild the social, political, economic, and cultural web of life that allows us to advance in the transformation of a failed and harmful industrial ecosystem. So the critical question that follows then is, to what extent can we scale up these practices of recomposing the refugia, of rebuilding the common, while making sure that the growing institutional support and public spending on agricultural paradigm shift do benefit the refugees, the humans and the non-human refugees? These could be translated into a set of more concrete questions, which I will now ask. How do we ensure that the institutionalization of agricultural paradigm shift, be in the name of agroecology or not, will not be rendered technical, as in many other cases, but instead could maintain the energetic spontaneity that is so much alive at the grassroots level? How do we ensure that the scaling up of agroecology will not be reduced to the scaling up of productivity, or the scaling up of value? How do we instead think of the scaling up as having more and more smallholder producers, including both human and non-human producers, moving forward and moving together in their entangled web of life? How do we ensure that the scaling up will not attract vested interest, for example, land speculations I have mentioned, whose appropriation of the values created by multi-species smallholders will again destroy the common? How do we instead devise viable strategies to keep the values within the circles of the regional economy? And then, last but not least, in light of the fact that the UN has adopted family farming as one of its central developmental goals through the UN Declaration of Decades of Family Farming of 2019 to 2028, how do we envision and encourage family farming without being limited by some reified and exclusionary visions of the family, as we see, for example, in the neoconservative mobilization of the family value? This is a question that I would like to specifically address to Dr. Shiva. I would like to seek for your advice. So overall, thank you. These are the questions and the interventions that I would like to bring up
by the ideas proposed by Professor Tsai. I think she also proposed several questions waiting for the answer from Dr. Shiva. Now I want to invite all three panelists to approach the platform. And after they seated, and then I would like to invite Dr. Shiva to give us some comments, especially in response to the questions proposed by Professor Tsai. Then I think after your short comments or answer, I would like to open the time to the whole audience. So you can ask your question or propose your comments in English or in Chinese. So I think we can translate Chinese to English to Dr. Shiva or other panelists. Okay, so please, Dr. Shiva, give your comment.
First, I want to thank both the Dean as well as the panelists. Very thoughtful presentations, both. Before coming to the very specific questions from Professor Tsai, I'd like to also bring in the issues raised by Professor Liu. I'd mentioned earlier that we have to move from a fragmented approach of separation to an interconnected systems perspective for a paradigm shift. Now, in the old paradigm, a farm was defined as a place where they're consumers of inputs. A farmer was not a producer, at best a producer of commodities. There was no consideration of the food as the value of nourishment or quality or taste. It was a commodity to be traded, and it didn't matter what it was traded for, where I mentioned the 90% use in non-food aspects of the large acreages of corn and soya. And when it comes to subsidies for biofuel and subsidies for factory farms, they are much higher than the purchasing power of humans, and definitely the zero purchasing power of the non-humans on the planet and in ecosystems. Then there are countries which make policies. They too are making paradigm shifts. And I'm just realizing, because you're a little island, and India is a very big country, and we were a food sovereign country till WTO, all the eyes of the big agribusiness are on India. And I want to give you two examples of what's happening right now. So you mentioned that the new policy is about a guaranteed price for rice farmers as well as the shift to organic. That's exactly the system we have, where India has the largest public feeding program based on government procurement. This is what gets knocked out with the domestic support. And I see WTO not as intergovernmental. I see WTO as a handful of powerful interests using their particular governments to push their agendas. And that's why the US gets used by the agribusiness of US. Monsanto happens to be in US. Cargill happens to be in US. And we have been sued in the WTO. We've stood up to it. We've stood up to it in Bali. We stood up to it right now in Rio de Janeiro, where we are being told you can't buy from your farmers. So there are really four aspects in the discussion of a paradigm shift. The entire family of humans and non-humans who work with the land and are co-producers, the farm itself, its ecosystem, a country in which the farm is located with its variations of policies, some more sovereign, others less sovereign, some more oriented to a paradigm shift, some shifting to an accelerated neoliberal paradigm in the period of its collapse. Also, that's happening. And finally, you have the handful of global players. I can count them for you. I mentioned them for the input sector. It's really a cartel of 3. The trading sector is a cartel of 4. They used to be called the merchants of grain. Cargill bought up the next biggest grain trader called Continental. So it is really big, and it sets the terms for trade. I have fought cases where they wanted to dump wheat. We didn't need wheat in India. We grow wonderful wheat. They wanted to dump wheat. Our port authorities said this is unfit for eating. According to our health standards, they tried to twist the government's arm to say, change your health standards. That's why I went to Supreme Court to say, how can Indian standards be changed just to create a market of food unfit for eating? And we stopped that import. But you turn your back and there's a dumping taking place. In the case of food safety standards, which are really food processing standards, it's 4 processors. It's the Pepsis, the Cokes. There's a new report out how every expert who talks about safety of Coke is paid by Coke, So you've got a lot of paid expertise and captive scientists. And Nestle. Nestle has been hauled up by our food safety authorities for having a lot of adulteration of lead in its noodles. And you were saying you are becoming the lowest in rice consumption. India, which is a chapati eating mainland and rice eating coastland, you go into the streets, even in villages, what is being sold? Guess what? Noodles. Chow mein has become the national dish. Chow mein. Because this processed food push is a very intensive food, and it requires changing safety laws and health laws. I think the 2 big shifts that we need to make are in the old paradigm, workers were an input. People, farmers were an input. And every study I've read on increasing farm productivity, and this was brought to us in India where we were told we have low productivity because we have 60% farmers. And America has high productivity because it has less than 2% on the land. And there are more people in the jails of America than on the farms of America. And in all of those years of the GATT and WTO issues, the 2 things that came out very clearly was America was not producing, the output was not food, it was a commodity. So it should not be treated as an equal thing. That's why the language of like product in WTO has to be questioned and changed. The input is not people. I've had debates with brilliant people from your discipline in economics who say, we have to reduce the denominator. And I say, farmers are not denominators, they're citizens of this land. And you cannot treat them as a figure to manipulate and get rid of them. And we worked out and calculated and showed the government that if you want to reach the American figure of 2% farmers from 60% farmers, you'd have to generate employment to absorb them. And on the current rates of employment generation, it would take 350 years of the displaced farmers, which is an impossible task. And I have watched country after country slip into crime as the dignified livelihoods of farmers are destroyed. NAFTA destroyed Mexico's farming. Today, 1/3 of Mexico gets its employment in crime. The drug crime, the kidnapping crime, because people have to live. And I have traveled to India, and I did for our statutory body for gender equality a study on the impact of WTO after 10 years. One on women's work in water provisioning, and the second in women in food and agriculture. And I did public hearings in different parts of India to look at what had happened in 10 years. And the 2 places, one was in the east in Calcutta and the other in Chennai, the 2 evidences that will never leave me. In Calcutta, they said, as more and more women get displaced from farming, there's a bigger explosion in sex trafficking. And in Chennai, this woman said, We used to go to the market every day with our produce. Our land's been grabbed, speculation. Now we still go to the market. I sell my body. It's the only way I can feed my children. And I don't think we should treat these trends as disconnected. There are women who work against sex trafficking, but they need to sow the uprooting that drives the women into that slave trade. I think it's time to recognize, and that's where your contribution is so important. The young people moving to farming are moving because they have defined life as life. They are turning their back to consumerism. They're not measuring how much do I earn to buy the next iPhone model, which I'm told now is 100,000 rupees. And you have to stand in queue for the next one and the next one and the next one, and there's built-in obsolescence. And I'm told the fashion industry, now earlier it used to be a yearly fashion trend, and now it's every month there's a new fashion trend. So if you're in that consumerism, you never have enough. And young people who are trapped in that can be earning fat salaries in finance and the global casino. It doesn't matter. They will always have to keep running on the treadmill. The young ones who are saying this is not life are moving to meaning, to values, to claiming themselves and their identity. So human beings in farming are not inputs to farming. I think meaningful work in farming has to be treated as an output by any policy measure. I said this yesterday to the Vice President. Next year is 100 years of the International Labour Organization. And redefining work is a very big agenda, because on the one hand, your old paradigm of farming is driving people off the land. On the other hand, the so-called new technologies are saying, but there's no work. So most displaced farmers in Delhi, in our street, are drivers. And now they're talking of driverless cars. Yeah? So you're basically saying, and you must read the speech of Mark Zuckerberg, who said 99% young people will be useless people in the future. Useless people. And they'll all be running for that 1% employment. It's a model that cannot work. It's dysfunctional ecologically because of the breaking of planetary limits. It's dysfunctional socially because you're taking young people down a road in which it's totally dead end. And you talked about people moving to cities, selling of land. You can't just sit morning till evening doing nothing and lead a normal life. That's why all the displaced workers and displaced farmers of America are on an opiate crisis, the biggest killer of America. In Punjab, a film has been made called Urta Punjab because 75% youth are on drugs. You cannot live a life without meaning, without turning to drugs as a way of passing day to day, or suicide, which is the other option. That cannot be an acceptable future for any individual, any government, and because farming is where 75% of the ecological crisis gets addressed, where 75% of the disease crisis gets addressed, and I would say 75% of the social unrest crisis. And social unrest is both within us, the inability to deal with life, the depression. Look at the rates of depression. I have not seen a small farmer who's depressed, who gets up in the morning, 4 a.m., out in the field. And when people come and say, but it's very hard work, I say, you're willing to spend 2 hours in a gym and pay 100,000 rupees. But your farm is your gym. And I want to write a new book on the yoga in the field. Because my Prime Minister keeps talking about yoga. I said, but the yoga in the field is the most important. And I know that when you grind your grain, you're not going to get osteoporosis. We make chapati like this. Never have osteoporosis. Eat junk food like this. Not just osteoporosis, obesity, everything under the sun. And these are real problems. I mean, they're no more marginal. they are at the heart of the crisis we address. The last thing I want to say, you talked about the small farmers, and you had a lovely phrase, you didn't call them small farmers, you called them the refugees. And you talked about small farms being a disadvantage in Taiwan. But if you put the two presentations together, the small farms are the solutions for. And all my personal research, as well as the UN FAO research, is showing the smaller the farm, the more the output. But you have to measure the output in terms of all the multifunctional outputs, not in terms of a monoculture commodity. Only in terms of a monoculture commodity does it appear like the large-scale produces more. But I've done a study on Punjab to show, well, with the old seeds and that much irrigation, we'd have had that much wheat and that much rice that we got from the Green Revolution. So it wasn't a chemical seed transformation, it was a land and water diversion to a monoculture. So we have to be far more honest in our calculations. I think the paradigm shift really has, as you said, become a survival necessity. But not a survival necessity in desperation. A survival necessity, not just in a paradigm shift, I would call it a quantum leap in imagination. I would call it the next step of human evolution. And this is where our thinking in the past was, we were mere inputs into a machine run by the fossil fuel and its derived systems. We now have to see ourselves as one species among millions, playing our role. Therefore, we are co-creators and co-producers. Brings me to all my books. You know, I did a report for FAO which showed that most farmers of the world are women, and they produce most of the real food. The fake food has some employees and slave labor. Most of the migrants in America work under slave conditions. Most of the migrants in Europe in farming, in industrial agriculture, are working in slave conditions. The East Europeans who are coming in. These are not sovereign workers who determine how they'll work, when they'll work, how long they'll work, and what they'll work for. These are so important. And there were two boundaries, and these are the last point I'll make. You know, there were two boundaries created, which are very artificial. The first was the production boundary, which said if you produce what you consume, you don't produce. This reduced women's work to non-work. This is how GDP and GNP is measured. That's why I work with the Bhutanese government, which said we won't measure GDP, we'll measure GNH, gross national happiness and well-being. Their entire planning is based on maximizing happiness and well-being. And when you describe the young people who are refugees, they are maximizing happiness and well-being and not maximizing depression and ill health, because that's the option we really have. The second boundary is the boundary that I have addressed a lot, the creation boundary, where it's assumed that the seed doesn't reproduce itself, a farmer has never bred seed, invention happens when a toxic gene is shot into a cell of a plant through using a gene gun or an agrobacterium cancer. That's a wrong definition of creativity. Creativity is happening all the time in life. And creativity and co-creativity is the new paradigm. And this is taking place in a deeply integrated family, which I call the Earth family. That's how we get out both of the patriarchal unit of a family as well as the new, whatever you can describe it as, of destroying society in the name of families by those who don't know how to take care of anything, anyone. We have to put care at the center of the new paradigm, not the carelessness of the technologies we can evolve. I think it's an exciting moment, and it's an exciting time you've organized this conference, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shiva. I think she already mentioned a lot of elements and challenges and her suggestions on the shifting of this paradigm shifting process. So as I promised, even though the time is limited, but I can borrow 5 minutes from the afternoon section and from your lunchtime. Maybe 1 or 2 chance for the questions. We will see who is lucky. Can propose how about the audience? Can you, we can allow 2 questions for the panelists here. You can use Chinese. Shiva already has his earphone, so we can translate to her. Start. Oh, there's one. Please,
the
microphone in your front.
Thank you very much for the panel's very excellent talk and very stimulating. I'm working for the World Vegetable Center. I'm a nutritionist. I heard the comments today about the healthy and sustainable food systems, and I can understand that it can be driven by 2 major forces. Of course, there are other forces, but 2 major forces. It's from the industrial, the economic force. Another one is from the agriculture and food ethics. So I'm thinking that Dr. Tai also mentions that it demonstrates a food system that can produce more diversity and also address the environmental health. But from current evidence, the very wide scale research showing that biodiversification does not contribute to the human beings' dietary quality and nutrition. So, but it doesn't mean you will not. But the current systems does not produce that kind of evidence. Basically, I think it's more comments rather than questions. I'm thinking that in order to, I think this is very important that we can consider the economics approach and also the ethical approach. To enhance the crosstalk is important. But in order to enhance the crosstalk, I think to generate the evidence is also very important. How the agriculture and food ethics approach that can demonstrate cost-effective and sustainable food systems that can drive the policy implications. So eventually, that can enhance, the crosstalk from the economic approach and also the agriculture and food ethics approach.
Thank you. I think Dr. Shiva wants to respond to your question and comments.
Yeah, I think the 2 responses. The first is, it's not the case it's ethics versus economics. It's one model of economics and another model of economics. One model of economics defines economics from the perspective of the outsider to that system, the ones who trade internationally. Their profits becomes the economics. The presentation we had was about the economics from the perspective of the species, the woman who's farming, the local county, that economics. I have always defined economics as 3. Now I define them as 4. The first economy is nature's economy. That's the root of the word oikos, from which ecology is derived, which means the science of the household, and economy is derived, which is the management of the household. The second economy is the social economy, the sustenance economy, and that's what was being described by you. The third economy is the market economy, which itself has 3 levels: the local, the national, and the global. And since globalization, market has been reduced only to the global, because every instrument of international laws on free trade, so-called, because it's free for corporations, but not for people, and not for farmers, and not for eaters, they're all laws of dismantling local and national. But now even that is being replaced. After the WTO came into being with deregulation, we substituted even the market, the real market, with digital finance first, and now digital everything. And Monsanto is now talking about eating data, literally, because they're saying we will have farming without farmers, and the next technology is digital agriculture, big data. They're calling big data the new oil. Of course, more money will move around. Look at how Bitcoin has created money out of nothing. But it won't be food that nourishes those 90% in our gut and our bodies and the planet, and it won't maintain the climate system. So ethics is the right economy, action according to the right way, and economics without ethics is the economy that destroys the planet, people's health, and the farmers. When it comes to your worry about evidence, this is all I've done for the last 20 years. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Biodiverse systems produce more nutrition per acre. We have to stop measuring monoculture commodity yield. Yield per acre is defined as a monoculture. Output per acre takes all functions into account. Nutrition per acre is focused on nutrition. Not only are more biodiverse systems producing more nutrition, and our data showing if India farmed the way our members, who are more than 1 million, farmed, India would have 2 times the amount of nutrition it needs, and we wouldn't be the 100th on the hunger list, on the hunger index. But even more important is the issue of seed, on which I work. A lot of research in Italy is showing native varieties have far more nutrition. They're more nutritionally dense. So in wheat, I can tell you, traditional wheats in India have 9% protein. The high-yielding varieties, which are 10% more in yield, have only 4% protein. So are you going to look at how much protein you eat or the amount you weigh to ship in a container? That's the fundamental issues of the paradigm shift that we need. And it is a tragedy that most money moved into the handful of 5 traders, 5 intellectual property chemical companies, 5 junk food processors. And a lot of research is guided by the money they can spend to shape the research. It is therefore time for public policy to be a counterbalance to bring in the well-being of the planet and the well-being of people. And every time we take care of the butterfly and bee, we are producing more food. It is not that there is not a human benefit. $600 billion those pollinators are contributing according to the biodiversity and ecosystem assessments, the team of UNEP.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And last question, please be short if you have. Another one? Well, please.
我用中文，可能要请有人帮我翻译。对，
稍微等一下，请那个 Dr. Shiva 戴好耳机。
好。就是我想要请教，因为我今天听那个希瓦博士分享关于有机农业这件事情，就是反映在台湾的有机农业，其实，我们现在有机农业其实不是刚刚听到的那种比较活生生的，它其实是已经落入比较有机认证的这个制度里面。那像我自己在我的城市遇到一个很大的问题是，我现在要去寻找一个可以供应我们社区的一个粮食系统，我们好像大部分还是得要去仰赖有机商店跟所谓的合作社，但其实我们都知道那个利润其实是很难实质落到农民的手上。那我现在开始去找在地的一些农场，面临到的大概2种状况，一种就是它是真的是比较是跟生态连结的有机，但是它会比较倾向自给自足的这样子的规模。那不然就是我们要么就是用很高的价位，它其实又是另外一种阶级的一个问题反映出来。那要么就是可以供应我们社区的那个量的有机农业，它是用所谓有机肥料，就是一样再去购买的有机肥料，还有另外一种就是防治系统，就是所谓的苏力菌。对，那我看那个希瓦的这本书，那个生物剽窃，其实有谈到苏力菌这个基因改造工程，它其实是也是非常，如果要把它放在虫害防治这件事情，其实是不可行的。那一方面，我想多听 这方面苏力菌的看法，因为在台湾的有机农业是认定苏力菌是就大家都觉得这是没有问题的，在有机农业的产业里面。然后另外一方面，我就会很好奇，在印度有没有一个这样比较可行的一个案例，它是可以在供应社区的这种粮食体系上的肥料也好，或者是防治系统也好，是可以作为台湾的一个借鉴的。对，谢谢。
Yeah. I began my presentation saying everything is food. And the first food system we have to reclaim is the food system of nature. Because the soils are being desertified, and when your soils are desertified, you won't have food. Dead soils produce no food. I think we are at a time where we must all produce a little bit, maybe one herb in our kitchen, one little plant in the windowsill, only to make the paradigm shift in action. Because it makes you realize that you can grow food. Urban areas are areas of big food revolution now. More and more urban gardens. Every school should have a garden. Every community, if it can't find little bits of land to have a garden, should find farmers. I call this the relationship with your food shed. Just like we ensure that when we have a town, that we have a watershed that supplies our drinking water, it is time to bring food into the planning of our cities. And I really liked your description. We need a reverse migration to the land by not degrading the work on land, because as imagining that all of humanity can live in cities means destroying the planet for two reasons. Cities take a lot more resources. I was yesterday with a storyteller who runs a bamboo thing, and you're a bamboo culture. Look at the bamboo houses, how light they are in the ecological footprint. And look at the cement buildings. I've done a cement study for the Ministry of Environment. I won't even begin to tell you the ecological footprint of centralizing all dwelling on cement. We need to have more plurality in our thinking, but the second reason why we need more people on the land is the land needs care. Abandoned land will not do the multiple functions of providing us nutrition. It will become a forest again, and that's fine. If we want to say we as a species want to create collective suicide, that's fine to go do business as usual. But if we want to have a future and live with other species while conserving and protecting and enhancing their ecological space, we need more people on the land to care for the earth. Caring for the earth has to be the most important part of organic farming. Organic is not a product. Organic is a worldview, a knowledge system of production is one part of it. Relating to others is another. We have to create food communities where we know how our food was grown and who grew it, and respect the grower. I don't think you should call them suppliers. We have a beautiful word in India. We call them annadatas, those who give us the gift of food.
谢谢你的问题，可能没有完全回答到整个paradigm shift 可能从生产到产销系统都需要做重新的思考。我想现在你遇到的问题，可能也是我们在发展郭老师在那边发展有机农业的整个的这个结构上的这个问题。我想今天是一个非常好的一个机会。This afternoon we still have a lot of talks, and we have a group from Europe, and the president is here. Maybe we can exchange experience. We can learn something from their group, from the experience from Europe. I think maybe our system may be similar to your system, the whole chain supplying system. How can we build up a system from the production to the end consumer, and we can, the whole organization and structure is important as well. So, 谢谢大家 thank you very much. I think I have to close the morning section due to the time of the limit. So, and please join me with your big hands again to thank for our all three guests and Dr. Shiva. So thank you very much. When we every time eat our food, including lunch, please think about real food or fake food. Consumer is the most important drivers for the whole system. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, please give a big round of applause for our moderator, Professor Lu, and Professor Lin, Professor Tsai, and Dr. Shiva. Thank you.